Hello everyone, I am here to do a quick tutorial about the menu in Gravity Sketch. So let's start by opening said menu. Uh, Depending on what hand you set your controllers, um, things will be opposite of me or the same, but we're going to say that the color wheel, back button, and the drawing hand is the dominant hand. So whether you have that left or right, we'll call that your dominant hand, and the menu and tool button, blue and purple buttons, whatever controller you have those, or whatever hand you have that controller set to, we'll call that the submissive button. One's dom, one's submissive. So let's start by opening the menu. Click on the lit up three-lined button, and we'll see that we have our first page under the floppy disk. We'll start right here. Got a few options, and we are going to start with the first one, which is called mirror. So mirror just gives you exactly what you would think it gives you, is a mirrored copy of everything you're doing on the opposite side of your dominant hand. So there you go, pretty simple. And then here are your options with mirror. If you go one step below the mirror button, you'll see the mirror style slider. And this slides from hidden to fixed to auto scale. And what auto scale is, it'll give you a full, notice when I touch my shapes together, it gives me a big mirror. This actually gives you a physical representation, like an actual mirror to visualize as you mirror your shapes. And notice as I move shapes up, down, left, right, it auto what was it called? It auto scales. So the mirror stays with you wherever you go. Second option is a fixed mirror, which doesn't move at all and just stays centered with wherever you're at. And then the final option, which I find the easiest to work with, is the hidden mirror. So you could just see your shapes mirroring with no weird mirror structure. Personally, I think it's kind of pointless, but it could help you with keeping straight about where the mirror is, because there'll be times when Gravity Sketch will open up and you may be sideways, or maybe you're mixed up inside of your creation, and so seeing the actual mirror could help you remember the orientation of everything. So next, under that, we're going to look at the Smart Move slider. The Smart Move tool helps you with moving shapes around inside your 3D space. So to demonstrate that, let me put out a, oops, it was a little large. Let me put out a cube. And you'll see that I have a few options of how I want to move the cubes around. And the one that that works with this Smart Move slider is called stacking. So you'll take your Smart Move slider and slide it up to X, Y, Z axis. And if you take your controllers and stack them right on top of each other and click the second trigger on your controller, you can move them up and down along each of these axes. So got my controllers set next to each other. I stack them on the Y axis, and I'm able to move my shapes along that axis when I click the lower trigger button on my dominant hand. And after you have them locked onto the axis, you could put your other hand down and just move them to wherever you want to. Just remember to restack your controllers after you stop. And then, the same way, X axis, you just stack your controllers sideways. You'll see the little sample line come up to show that you're on point, and then you could move them side to side. And that is the best way to keep things even and, keep the mess down as you're getting more complicated with your sculpt. Now, the next option on the Smart Move slider does utilizes the same function, but it lets you move freely. So instead of being stuck to an axis, which you can still do in this option, you now could go diagonally. And instead of the axis lines coming up as the color of the axis you're moving along, for example, I'm on the x-axis, so you see the red line showing up as I move along it. You'll see a gray line that comes up, and that's just to represent how you're moving freely in space, but still on a line and still as evenly as possible. So jump between those two options if you want to keep your blocks or your shapes or whatever objects you're working with um, even. So now let's slide this. I like to stay on the XYZ axis. I think it's the cleanest one to use. But let's slide back down there and go to the next option, which is surface contours. The surface contours are what give you contoured lines to show how it'll show you how you're manipulating your shapes. Here, it's easiest to just turn it on and show you. Enable only in edit mode. Okay, so this means that you'll grab your shape, click the blue button, go into edit mode, and you'll see all of these lines on your shape. And what that's doing is just showing you, it's giving you kind of like measurable lines to look to as guiding lines even. It's probably more accurate word than measurable lines. But see, as I extrude out edges of these shapes, or I mean extrude faces out, the lines the lines appear where each extrusion starts and stops. And as you start to build more complicated shapes, those lines will become really helpful with measuring and just keeping things accurate. So you have two options with the surface contours. One is edit mode, which we just saw, where they're enabled only in edit mode. So the shape isn't in edit mode, so it's naked. And the third option creates the contour lines regardless of what shapes you have out and regardless of whether they're in edit mode or not. So you just need to grab your shape, convert it to a subdivision object, and turn the subdivision level up, and you'll have your contour lines. And so let's say I wanted to maybe build windows on a building, or like just place details on like a car frame or any kind of like situation with sculpting. These lines help you to measure. Next, we will go over to the world axis. This one's very simple. Just turns on your axis. I suggest always keep that on. I don't see any reason why you'd want to turn off the world axis. Because there'll be times where you even get lost in space and you'll want to be able to just look around and go right back to the center, and having that world axis on helps all of that. Next option, stage floor. So the stage floor, very simple. It's exactly as it sounds, a stage floor. We can, oops, I forgot about the one crucial thing with stage floor. You need to have a shape out because it generates based on what objects you're working on. So see, as I put this square out, gives me a stage floor to set my shape on. And you just have two options between that, a round floor, a square floor. Very simple. I don't really care for the stage floor in my personal use. I like to just build the stage that my objects are going to be set on, because when I export things to Blender, that stage floor can't go with your shape. It's something that's purely for the Gravity Sketch setting. And so I like to build all my stages in here in Gravity Sketch so that I have them ready in Blender. So stage floor for me mostly stays off. I see a lot of people in Gravity Sketch, while they're sculpting, will just throw shapes out. Wait, I even have that on the wrong setting. They'll just throw shapes out and just start messing with the shapes. And they don't use like axes like I was teaching you about. They don't set things out evenly. They kind of just let things be, you know, equal to like the, oh god, what's the word I'm trying to say? Um, People kind of measure with their naked eye, and there's a lot of tools within Gravity Sketches tool belts that will help you with making things a lot more even. And one of the great ones is this grid. So when you turn on the grid, you get an array of gridded dots, and you can turn those down, make them really tiny, you make it really big. And here's the difference between both of those options. Let's make the grid really tiny. So the dots that are showing up around my controller are kind of like a guiding. It's almost like a guiding box. Your shapes will generate on these gridded dots and be very exact and flat. So you see how like everything's glitching right now? It's because every time I move my controller, the shape is trying to basically magnetized to whatever dots are closest to it. And so your shapes are always going to come out really, really even. Nothing, turned to its side, nothing kind of off axis. Won't that delete? Okay. And so, when you turn your grid all the way down, it becomes a little easier to utilize the grid. But this is something you'll just have to test out on your own and see how it works. But watch when I use the drawing tool. See, the drawing tool immediately snaps to the closest square and then snaps to the next square, to the next square. And if I wanted to, I could just measure something out and just use these squares to build it. But that's how the grid works. It's basically like a magnet for your object generation. So let's turn that off. I find it actually is a little bit annoying a lot of the time. So earlier I was talking about having your world axis on. So world axis off, world axis on. Let's say that I build something really big and now my axis is way over there. It's off to the side. I don't want to have to try and scroll back there with my arms because my arms are getting tired. You just come into the home menu, click on this magnifying glass on the building, and boom, you slide right back to the center of your axis, and you're good to go to keep sculpting. So what is the next part we can talk about? Ooh. No, I'll go over these ones later. Probably best to go over the tool belt. Um, so here is something that Gravity Sketch does not make easy for you to find. If you go into the gears on the menu and then at the top of the list, scroll over to this star. Click on the star and you'll see at the top of the menu tool belt. Explore a range of workflow tools including precision move, teleport, paint, etc. Slide that on and then you will grab the bottom trigger of your dominant controller and just slide your head in front of you. Just like this. Slide, 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 slide. You'll see you got a bunch of tools here, all of which are slightly irrelevant, but I'm going to show them to you and you might find some use for them. For example, we were just talking about teleporting with the world axis. This banana, if you were to make, let's say, a whole park, or a castle and a forest, and you're like, dang, I'm all the way in the castle. I want to get to the edge of the forest. Oh, oh, This allows you to teleport. Oh, wait, I should have put something back at the axis so you can see what's happening. Let's go back to the axis. Here we are. Okay, let me choose a color. Put a nice big, oops, that is the wrong thing. We'll put a nice spirally shape here so you can tell what's going on when I use this banana tool. All right, so now we pick up our banana. See? The gosh dang shape is way back there. So you can teleport around your 3D space with this banana as far as you want to. You can do it just a foot ahead of you. I could center this right under my shape and go right back on top of it. It's a useful tool if you build a lot of things in like a full-on virtual space. Paint dropper, it's exactly what you think it is. If you have a lot of colors out here, you could paint drop them and pick up the colors for your next object. So like, oop, grab a bunch of red. Now I got red. Grab this blue. Now I get the blue. Pink. Grab the pink. And they all work in the same function. You grab them with the bottom trigger on your dominant hand, and then you'll utilize their function with the top trigger. Now let's add all of these together because I'm going to show you what this other tool does. The dice. This one, a truly irrelevant tool. I don't really understand what Gravity Sketch was thinking. Maybe somebody was like, thought they were doing something innovative. I can't tell, but here's what this tool does. Just randomly mixes up your shapes. All the components of an object you make will just start to reform themselves into random configurations. So maybe that would be cool if you're, I don't know, making a field of grass and you want the grass to look a little more randomized than hand placed. That dice might help you. Now here's what I think is the most convenient tool in the tool belt. You pull out something like let's do a ring. Okay. So if you can't get the stacking function very easily, this tool right here will help you with that plus two other modes that you're probably gonna love to use. So let's get the tool belt back out. You'll grab this magnifying glass over on the left side. So once again, grab with the bottom trigger and you'll utilize the function of the magnifying glass with the top trigger. So hover onto a shape and you see how the magnifying glass turns yellow. Now if you toggle the joystick left and right, you'll move through a few different modes. You got one that turns on axes. You've got this, I like to call it like a cherry bomb just because of the color that it's built in. But if you click with that tool and then click again to pull up the green tab, you increase the size of your shape. And let's move over to the next option. Let go of the top trigger while still holding the tool and slide your joystick over again. You'll see this axis of arrows. Pull on them and you can transfer your, ow, fuck. Oh, embarrassing. I just hit something in real space. So that you can transfer your shapes along axes without having to stack your controllers. Makes it really easy. And last one, turning on the axes in a 360-degree. Boom. And then the last tool, I mean, I don't need to show you the paintbrush, but kind of clear what the paintbrush does. You can choose a color and then paint it, but it's really, it's a useless tool. Useless. Now this one really only works if you have a lot of shapes out, because it'll start to, it's kind of similar to the dice wand, where it's just going to open up your shape and kind of randomize how you can slice it. And you'll be able to see different viewpoints of the inside of what you're sculpting. So now, slide that tool belt back. Remember, grab the bottom trigger and pull across your body to pull it out. Grab the trigger, pull back to, and pull back to close it.